James Hogan, died January 4, 1781, was an Irish-American military officer who was as one of 5 generals from North Carolina to serve with the Continental Army during the American Revolutionary War. Born in Ireland, Hogan migrated to North Carolina, then a British colony, in 1751. Settling in Halifax County, he raised a family and established himself as a prominent local figure. A member of the county's Committee of Safety, he represented it at the North Carolina Provincial Congress and helped to draft the first Constitution of North Carolina. Initially a major in the 7th North Carolina Regiment, Hogan advanced quickly in rank during 1776 to become the unit's commanding officer. He participated in the battles of Brandywine and Germantown in 1777. The Continental Congress promoted Hogan to brigadier general in 1779. Although several congressmen in the North Carolina General Assembly wished to see Thomas Clark of North Carolina promoted instead. Hogan was in command of North Carolina's Line Brigade during the siege of Charleston in the spring of 1780, which ended in the surrender of all but one of North Carolina's regiments of regular infantry as well as more than 5,000 Patriot soldiers under Major General Benjamin Lincoln. Hogan was the highest-ranking officer from North Carolina to be captured and imprisoned after the surrender of Charleston, and despite being offered the opportunity to leave internment under a parole that was generally extended to other captured Continental officers, he remained in a British prisoner of war camp near Charleston. Hogan likely chose imprisonment in order to prevent the British Army from recruiting Continental soldiers for its campaign in the West Indies. He became ill and died in the prison on Hedrell's Point, a peninsula in Charleston's harbor. Much of Hogan's early life remains unknown, due to his relative obscurity until the American Revolutionary War. He immigrated to North Carolina from Ireland, his place of birth, in 1751, and on October 3 that year he married Ruth Norfleet. The couple had a son, Lemuel. Hogan made his home near the modern-day community of Hogun in Halifax County. In 1774, Hogan became a member of the Halifax County Committee of Safety, which indicated his rise to prominence since arriving in the colony 23 years prior. Between August 1775 and November 1776, Hogan represented Halifax County in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th North Carolina Provincial Congresses, and demonstrated an interest in military matters. As a delegate, Hogan assisted in drafting the first Constitution of North Carolina. Hogan was named a major in the 7th North Carolina Regiment in April 1776, and was given command of the unit on November 26, 1776. Initially, the regiment had some difficulty organizing after several of the officers delayed their military work in order to take care of their personal affairs. Hogan was forced to reprimand his officers sharply, threatening them with the loss of their commissions. At the same time, currents of doubt ran through North Carolina, as Loyalists attempted to hinder enlistment of Patriots by spreading rumors about the imminent demise of the Patriot Army in the North, and disease that was allegedly ravaging that forced out while commanding his regiment. Hogan fought against the British Army in the battles of Brandywine and Germantown, and was present at Valley Forge in the winter of 1777-78. In 1778, Hogan was given orders to assist in recruiting the so-called additional regiments requested by the Continental Congress from North Carolina, and afterwards was ordered to West Point with the 1st Regiment so recruited. After his arrival, and throughout the late autumn and winter of 1778-79, Hogan's regiment served on a work detail tasked with building up the fortifications at West Point. Hogan was not satisfied with this task, but his men lacked sufficient weapons to allow them to serve as a combat unit at that time. Approximately 400 muskets had to be requisitioned for the regiment to be fully armed. In early 1779, Major General Benedict Arnold, then Commandant of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, requested that General George Washington send him an additional regiment of Continental soldiers to guard the Patriot stores in Philadelphia. Hogan was sent to Arnold with his newly recruited regiment, arriving on or before January 19, 1779. On January 9, 1779, while en route to Philadelphia, Hogan was promoted to brigadier general by the Continental Congress. His promotion came about in part as a result of what Thomas Burke, a delegate to the Continental Congress from North Carolina, and a fellow Irishman, termed the distinguished intrepidity Hogan had exhibited at Germantown. This caused some controversy, as the North Carolina General Assembly, which was customarily consulted for the promotion of generals from that state, had already nominated Thomas Clark and Jethro Sumner for promotion to the rank of brigadier general. Sumner was promoted, but Clark was passed over in favor of Hogan, who received the support of 9 of the 13 states. Hogan's surprising victory was due in large part to Burke's lobbying efforts among his colleagues in the Continental Congress. By political conventions governing such matters, Burke was bound by the vote of the North Carolina General Assembly to support the state legislature's recommendations of Clark and Sumner, but he worked to convince other congressmen to vote for Hogan over Clark. Hogan was appointed to succeed Arnold as Commandant of Philadelphia on March 19, 1779, serving until November 22 that year. In November 1779, Hogan took command of the North Carolina Brigade of the North Carolina Line, composed of the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th North Carolina regiments. Through the winter of 1779-80, Hogan led the brigade of about 700 men from Philadelphia to Charleston, South Carolina, where he was placed under the command of Major General Benjamin Lincoln. The march was arduous, and Hogan's brigade endured one of the coldest, harshest winters in years. Hogan's command arrived at Charleston on March 13, 1780, which according to Lincoln gave great spirit to the town and confidence to the army. The North Carolinians were immediately put to the task of defending the city, which was threatened with a siege by British General Henry Clinton in early March. Shortly after Hogan's arrival, many of North Carolina's militia present in the city began to return home because their enlistment terms ended on or about March 24. The militiamen had only agreed to serve limited terms, and as they were not under Hogan's direct command, he was powerless to stop them leaving. Charleston was principally located on a peninsula, and so Lincoln aligned his Continental units in defensive works that barricaded the neck of the peninsula, using a line of redoubts, redans, and batteries. These defensive works were connected by a parapet and commanded from a concrete hornwork jutting out from the defensive line. In front of the fortifications, the Patriot forces dug an 18-foot wide moat, and between the moat and parapet they constructed a line of abatis to stall any British assault. When the siege by the British Army began in earnest on April 1, Hogan and his men were positioned on the right of the Continental Army's lines, near the Cooper River. Hogan participated in a council of war on April 20, 1780. Several members of the South Carolina Privy Council, a part of the civilian government, threatened to block the Continental Army's attempts to withdraw from Charleston if the Council of War voted to do so. Although the defending army had only 8 to 10 days' worth of provisions, Lincoln bowed to pressure from civil authorities and delayed evacuation. On April 26, another council of war at which Hogan was present determined that the British presence on all sides of the city prevented the army's escape. For the next 2 weeks, the British and Patriot forces exchanged artillery and rifle fire at all times of day, and the British bombardment whittled down the American breastworks. On May 8, Lincoln called another council of war with all his army's general and field officers and ship's captains to discuss terms of surrender that had been proposed by Clinton. Of the 61 officers in attendance at that council, 49, including Hogan, voted to offer terms of capitulation with the British commander. When these were rejected, hostilities continued, and Lincoln called another council of war on May 11 to further discuss terms of capitulation. The council voted to present further terms to Clinton, which he accepted. On May 12, 1780, Hogan was among the officers under Lincoln who formally surrendered to the British Army, along with approximately 5,000 Continental and militia soldiers. The surrender led to the loss of all but one of the regiments of the North Carolina line and in existence, depriving the state of all regular, non-militia soldiers. As a brigadier general, Hogan held the highest rank of the approximately 814 Continental soldiers from North Carolina who capitulated at Charleston. Rather than allowing himself to be paroled, Hogan requested he be taken prisoner, and was interned at the British prison camp at Hedrell's Point on Point Pleasant, located in what is now Mount Pleasant, South Carolina, across from Sullivan's Island. Hogan's decision was based, in part, on his desire to stifle the recruiting efforts of the British, who sought to enlist captured Continental soldiers to serve in the British West Indies. The British, however, held only the officers at Hedrell's Point, deciding to house the enlisted men in barracks in Charleston. Officers at Hedrell's Point were subjected to harsh treatment, barred from fishing to catch much-needed food, and threatened with deportation from South Carolina. Approximately 3,300 Patriot soldiers were confined in prison camps around Charleston that were similar to the one at Hedrell's Point, and many were destined for cramped, unsanitary prison ships. Because of the conditions, many Continental soldiers agreed to join Loyalist regiments, but Hogan and other officers set up courts-martial in the camps and attempted to maintain a dignified military structure, Hogan's health soon declined, and he died in the prison camp on January 4, 1781. He was buried in an unmarked grave. On March 14, 1786, the North Carolina legislature granted Hogan's son, Lemuel, a 12,000-acre, 4,900 ha, 19 square miles, tract near modern-day Nashville, Tennessee, in recognition of his father's service. The elder Hogan was one of 22 Patriot generals who perished during the American Revolutionary War, and one of 12 who died from disease or other non-combat causes. In the early 20th century, North Carolina jurist and historian Walter Clark noted that while the careers of three of North Carolina's other generals, Brigadier Generals Francis Nash and James Moore, and Major General Robert Howe, were well known to contemporary historians, the story of Hogan's career as well as that of Jethro Sumner had been neglected. Hogan's personal papers appear to have been destroyed while in the possession of his descendants in Alabama during the American Civil War, leaving virtually no surviving correspondence that would shed further light on his life. In 1954, the North Carolina Highway Historical Marker Program, a division of the North Carolina Department of Cultural Resources, erected a historical marker in Hogan's honor near his former home in Halifax County. Barefoot, Daniel, 1998. Touring North Carolina's Revolutionary War sites. Winston-Salem, North Carolina, John F. Blair. ISBN 978-0-895887-217-3. CS1 made, ref = Harv, link. Bodrick, Carl P. 2003. A Gallant Defense, The Siege of Charleston, 1780. Columbia, South Carolina, University of South Carolina Press. ISBN 1-57003-487-7. CS1 made, ref = Harv, link. Burroughs, Edwin G. 2008. Forgotten Patriots, The Untold Story of American Prisoners During the Revolutionary War. New York, Basic Books. ISBN 978-0-465-00835-3. CS1 made, ref = Harv, link. Clark, Walter, 1906. James Hogan. In Ash, Samuel A. ed. Biographical History of North Carolina from Colonial Times to the Present. Volume 4. Greensboro, North Carolina, C. L. Van Noppen. Pages 196 to 202. OCLC 4243114. CS1 made, ref = Harv, link. Davis, Charles L. Bellis, Henry H. 1896. A Brief History of the North Carolina Troops on the Continental Establishment in the War of the Revolution, with a register of officers of the same, and a sketch of the North Carolina Society of the Cincinnati, from its organization in 1783 to its so-called dissolution after 1790. Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, SNOCLC 3170032. CS1 made, ref = Harv, link. Rankin, Hugh F. 1988. Hogan, James. In Powell, William S. ed. Dictionary of North Carolina Biography. Volume 3, H.K. Chapel Hill, North Carolina, University of North Carolina Press. Pages 163 to 64. ISBN 978-0-8078-1806-0. CS1 made, ref = Harv, link. Rankin, Hugh F. 1971. The North Carolina Continentals. Chapel Hill, North Carolina, University of North Carolina Press. ISBN 978-0-8078-1154-2. CS1 made, ref = Harv, link. Syrie, Stephen E. 2012. Liberty's Fallen Generals, Leadership and Sacrifice in the American War of Independence. Washington, D.C. Potomac Books Incorporated. ISBN 978-1-59797-792-0. CS1 made, ref = Harv, link.